The Galactic Diplomatic Hub floated like an oversized crystal chandelier against the backdrop of swirling nebula, its architecture screaming, "We're civilized," in about 17 different architectural styles. Inside, various species bustled about in what they considered their finest diplomatic attire, though to any objective observer it looked more like a costume party gone horribly wrong. The latest buzz among the interstellar community centered around the imminent arrival of Earth's first diplomatic delegation. Most species had already placed their bets on what these humans would be like. The consensus leaned heavily towards soft, comfortable creatures, given their origin from a Type 1 gravity world. How wonderfully wrong they were. The Centurion ambassador, with their flowing tentacles and bioluminescent spots, had spent the better part of an hour explaining to their colleagues why humans would obviously be docile herbivores. "Their planet is mostly water. They must be like our peaceful aquatic brethren," they insisted, while absent-mindedly consuming their 7th helping of synthesized algae. The first sign that something was amiss came when the human ship docked. Instead of the expected sleek, automated vessel, it was a utilitarian craft that looked like someone had taken a shipping container, strapped engines to it, and called it a day. The docking procedure itself was manual, as if the humans actually enjoyed the prehistoric practice of piloting their own vessels. When the airlock cycled open, the assembled delegation of various species fell into a silence so profound you could hear a Martian dust mite sneeze. The humans stepped out with a grace that seemed to defy their solid build. Their suits, black, fitted and somehow managing to look both professional and menacing, moved with them like a second skin. The lead human, sporting what would later be identified as a smile, showed too many teeth for comfort. Several herbivorous species instinctively took a step back, their evolutionary warning systems screaming danger despite millions of years of civilization. "Greetings," the human said, voice carrying effortlessly across the chamber. "We hope we haven't kept you waiting." The translator devices rendered the words perfectly, but somehow failed to capture the underlying tone that made several species' threat glands activate. The Rigelian ambassador, known for their diplomatic finesse, floated forward on their gravity nullifier. "Welcome to the Galactic Diplomatic Hub. We are most pleased to—" They stopped mid-sentence as they noticed the humans tracking their movement with an intensity usually reserved for targeting systems. What followed was the most awkward tour in the history of interspecies relations. The humans moved with a predatory grace that made the military attachés nervous and the civilian representatives reconsider their career choices. They asked questions about everything: security systems, environmental controls, emergency protocols, all while maintaining what they called professional courtesy, but what registered to everyone else as sizing up prey. During the customary welcome feast, things got even more interesting. The humans consumed both plant and animal-based nutrients with equal enthusiasm, a fact that horrified the vegetarian species and impressed the carnivores. They used their eating implements with precise movements that somehow reminded everyone of weapon handling. The Arcturus representative leaned over to their aide and whispered, "Did Earth send diplomats or hunters?" The answer, as it turned out, was both. As the formal introductions wound down and the various species prepared for the upcoming negotiations, one thing became crystal clear. Earth hadn't just sent representatives. They'd sent apex predators dressed in formal wear, their primitive hunting instincts barely concealed beneath layers of diplomatic protocol. The Galactic Council's chief administrator, a being composed primarily of ionic gas and good intentions, drifted anxiously toward their office. They needed to update the risk assessment protocols immediately. Clearly, nobody had considered that a species could evolve to be both diplomatically capable and fundamentally terrifying. In their wake, the humans left a trail of unsettled diplomats, each wondering the same thing. How had they missed this? The signs were there in Earth's historical transmissions, the sports, the business tactics, the entertainment showing persistence, hunting, and strategic thinking. They'd all dismissed it as cultural metaphor. As the first day drew to a close, the human delegation retired to their assigned quarters, their measured steps echoing down the corridors. The lead human's parting words hung in the air like a friendly threat. Looking forward to tomorrow's negotiations. We have so much to discuss. Several species decided to sleep with their lights on that night. Not that it would help. After all, humans, as they would soon learn, could see perfectly well in the dark. The morning cycle of the Galactic Diplomatic Hub dawned with all the subtlety of an anxiety attack. Various species found themselves arriving unusually early to the negotiation chambers, driven by a peculiar mix of diplomatic duty and morbid curiosity. The humans naturally had arrived even earlier. The main negotiation chamber, designed to accommodate beings of all shapes, sizes, and states of matter, had never felt quite so inadequate. The humans had positioned themselves at their designated table with sightlines to every entrance and exit, a fact that the security chief, a veteran of 3 interstellar conflicts, noted with professional admiration and personal concern. "Let's begin with trade agreements," announced the council moderator, their crystalline form refracting light in what they hoped was a soothing pattern. Earth has expressed interest in establishing commercial routes through the Orion Spur. The human delegation's lead negotiator leaned forward slightly, a movement so minimal yet so deliberate that 3 different species activated their fight-or-flight responses. "Indeed, we've noticed the current trade routes are inefficient." The way they said inefficient made it sound like a diagnosis of a terminal condition. The Proximan Trade Minister, a being composed of linked geometric shapes, attempted to explain the complex historical and cultural reasons behind the existing route structure. They made it halfway through their carefully prepared presentation before noticing that the humans weren't just listening, they were dissecting each point with predatory precision. "Fascinating," said one of the human delegates, making notes with an archaic physical writing tool that looked disturbingly like a small spear. "So what you're saying is that these routes were established based on political favoritism rather than economic sense." The chamber erupted in diplomatic coughing fits and polite denials, but the damage was done. The humans had identified a weakness in the existing system and moved in for the metaphorical kill with all the subtlety of a shark at a swimming competition. "We propose a new routing system," continued the human, displaying a holographic map that somehow made the existing trade routes look like a child's crayon drawing. "Our calculations show a 47% increase in efficiency, 32% reduction in fuel consumption, and," they paused for effect, "a 15% decrease in transit taxes for all participating members." The various economic advisors in the room began running numbers, their expressions shifting from skepticism to surprise to something approaching panic. The humans had done their homework, and they'd done it terrifyingly well. During the ensuing discussion about implementation details, the human delegation maintained a posture that the military observers would later describe as combat-ready relaxation. They responded to questions with precise, prepared answers, while somehow making it look completely spontaneous. It was like watching predators play with their food, except the food was complex economic theory, and the predators wore impeccably tailored suits. The Arthurian representative, known for their unflappable nature, actually flapped when a human delegate casually mentioned their species' historical practice of persistence hunting, the art of chasing prey until it literally couldn't run anymore. "Just like how we approach negotiations," the human had added, with what they probably thought was a reassuring smile. During the mid-session recess, various species huddled in corners, comparing notes and observations. The Rigelian military attaché was overheard saying, "They're not negotiating, they're hunting, in 3 dimensions: economic, political, and psychological." The humans, meanwhile, maintained their position at the center of the chamber, occasionally sipping water with movement so controlled it made everyone nervous. One delegate was observed eating a protein bar in small, measured bites, a display that somehow managed to remind everyone of a documentary about Earth's ancient predators. When discussions turned to technology exchange, the humans revealed another aspect of their predatory nature: intellectual hunger. They absorbed information with an intensity that made the Education Consortium representatives squirm in their gravity chairs. Their questions weren't just probing, they were precision strikes at the heart of every technical concept. "Your FTL communication system is impressive," one human observed, "but have you considered the applications of quantum entanglement on a macro scale?" The technical experts had considered it, of course, but hearing it suggested so casually by a species that had achieved spaceflight less than a century ago was unsettling. The afternoon session brought discussions about military cooperation, a topic that several species had been dreading. The humans presented their defensive capabilities with a casualness that bordered on psychological warfare. "Oh, this? Just a basic planetary defense grid. Nothing special. Though we did incorporate some interesting ideas from studying Earth's ant colonies." The military representatives spent the next hour trying to process how a species had turned insect behavior into a defense strategy that made their own systems look outdated. As the day progressed, a pattern emerged. The humans weren't just participating in negotiations, they were orchestrating a complex dance of diplomatic predation. Every concession they offered came with carefully crafted conditions. Every agreement they proposed contained subtle advantages, and every discussion somehow led to a conclusion that aligned with their objectives. The Centurion ambassador, who had been so confident about humans being peaceful aquatic descendants, was now sending urgent messages back home, suggesting a complete review of their defense protocols. Their final note reportedly read, "Send warriors, not diplomats. The humans have enough of both for everyone." During the economic summit portion, the humans introduced a concept they called competitive advantage, with such enthusiasm that several species developed spontaneous stress reactions. Their economic models weren't just efficient, they were aggressive, designed to create growth through controlled conflict. "Think of it as natural selection applied to commerce," explained a human delegate, apparently oblivious to how terrifying that concept was to species that had spent millennia trying to eliminate competition from their societies. The day sessions concluded with a cultural exchange presentation that somehow made Earth's history of warfare sound like a recipe for technological innovation. The humans spoke of something called the military-industrial complex, with the same casual tone others used to discuss weather patterns. As the various delegations filed out of the chamber, the humans remained behind, reviewing notes and engaging in quiet discussion. Their movements, even in these casual moments, retained that distinctive predatory grace that had become the subject of so much nervous discussion. The Galactic Council's security director, watching through multiple surveillance systems, summed up the day's events in their report with admirably succinct terror. "They're not just apex predators, they're apex predators who have mastered bureaucracy. The galaxy may never be the same." The human delegation's departure from the chamber was as methodical as their arrival. They gathered their materials with precise movements, straightened their suits with practiced care, and walked out with that same measured pace that made everyone think of documentary footage about Earth's big cats. In their wake, they left behind a chamber full of beings, wondering if they'd just participated in negotiations or survived an elaborate hunt. The answer, of course, was both, because humans, as the galaxy was learning, had simply turned diplomatic relations into another form of predation, and tomorrow would bring the technical negotiations. Several species decided to update their wills that evening, just in case. After all, when dealing with predators in suits, it was better to be prepared for anything, especially when those predators had somehow managed to make parliamentary procedure sound like a hunting strategy. The human delegation's parting message for the day was delivered with their now characteristic blend of professional courtesy and predatory intent. We look forward to continuing these productive discussions tomorrow. There's still so much to explore. The emphasis on explore sent shivers down various species' spinal equivalents. Because when humans said explore, the galaxy was learning they meant it in the same way their ancestors had meant it when discovering new hunting grounds. The Galactic Diplomatic Hub's AI system, programmed to maintain optimal environmental conditions, noted an unusual spike in stress pheromones across multiple species and adjusted the atmospheric calming agents accordingly. It wouldn't help much. No amount of chemical calming could fully offset the realization that humanity had evolved to turn diplomatic negotiations into a form of hunting. As night fell on the diplomatic station, the various species retired to their quarters, many of them researching Earth's history with a new perspective. The humans, according to surveillance, spent their evening exercising in their quarters, a reminder that beneath those well-tailored suits lay the bodies of persistent predators who had never quite forgotten their hunting roots. Tomorrow would bring new negotiations, new revelations, and new reasons for the galactic community to reconsider their initial assumptions about Earth's representatives. But for now, the station hummed, with nervous energy as its inhabitants tried to sleep, knowing that somewhere aboard, humans were preparing for another day of diplomatic hunting. The third day of negotiations began with an incident that would later be known as the coffee revelation. The human delegation had brought their own beverage, a dark liquid that smelled like concentrated awakeness, and consumed it while reviewing documents with an intensity that made several species question their life choices. "Is that stimulant-based?" asked the regulatory commissioner, their translucent appendages twitching with concern. "Just coffee," replied a human delegate, taking another sip. "We find it helps us stay focused." The unspoken implication that humans needed chemical assistance to become even more alert sent ripples of unease through the chamber. Today's agenda focused on technological partnerships and resource management, topics that typically induced coma-like states in most beings. The humans, however, approached these discussions with the same predatory enthusiasm they'd shown for everything else. The Technology Exchange Director, a being of pure energy contained within a sophisticated environmental suit, began their presentation on shared research initiatives. They were halfway through explaining the concept of collaborative development when they noticed the humans' expressions had shifted from polite interest to something distinctly more hungry. "Your quantum computing research is impressive," said one human, their smile showing just enough teeth to be professional yet unsettling. "But have you considered applying it to predictive modeling of complex systems, say, for example, competitive market behaviors?" The director's energy form flickered noticeably. They had, in fact, not considered using their most advanced computing systems to gain economic advantages. The very idea seemed somehow predatory. During the discussion of resource allocation, the humans revealed their true colors in a way that left the chamber in stunned silence. They proposed a system of resource management that was simultaneously fair, efficient, and somehow gave them access to every strategically significant material in 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. "It's just basic game theory," explained a human delegate, as if suggesting the complete reorganization of galactic resource distribution was as casual as ordering lunch. "Everyone gets what they need, plus a little extra for growth potential." The Economic Advisory Board spent the next hour trying to find the catch in the proposal, only to discover that the catch was that there wasn't an obvious catch. And that realization was somehow more terrifying than any hidden clause could have been. A minor diplomatic crisis erupted when the humans demonstrated their approach to problem-solving. The station's artificial gravity had developed a slight fluctuation. Nothing serious, just enough to make some species mildly uncomfortable. Before the engineering team could even begin their diagnostic protocols, 2 human delegates had already identified the issue, proposed 3 possible solutions, and implemented the most efficient one. "We like fixing things," they said, their casual competence making everyone wonder what else they could fix, if given the chance. The afternoon session brought discussions about cultural exchange programs, during which the humans managed to turn what should have been a simple conversation about academic cooperation into a masterclass in subtle dominance. They expressed enthusiastic interest in learning about every species' culture, history, and biological characteristics, with an intensity that reminded everyone of scientific predators studying their prey. "We are particularly interested in your species' stress responses and decision-making processes under pressure," said one human to the psychological studies representative, who immediately requested a leave of absence. The humans' presentation on their own culture was equally unsettling. They spoke of something called competitive sports, organized activities where humans voluntarily engaged in simulated combat for entertainment. The concept of finding recreation in controlled conflict situations sent several peace-loving species into temporary hibernation. "And this is what you do for fun?" asked the recreation coordinator, their chromatic scales shifting to a nervous purple. "Oh, that's just the beginning," replied a human delegate, proceeding to describe something called extreme sports with enthusiasm that bordered on concerning. The idea of voluntarily jumping from high places for entertainment made several gravity-sensitive species excuse themselves from the chamber. The negotiations took an unexpected turn when the topic of emergency response protocols came up. The humans' approach to crisis management was so efficiently aggressive that it made military intervention look hesitant by comparison. "In emergency situations, decisive action is crucial," explained the human emergency response specialist, their calm demeanor somehow making their words more intimidating. "We find that a rapid, coordinated response usually prevents situations from escalating." The Security Council representatives exchanged worried glances, suddenly understanding why human emergency services were often more feared than the emergencies they responded to. During the mid-afternoon break, several species observed the humans engaging in what they called casual conversation, a practice that seemed to involve exchanging information while simultaneously analyzing each other's responses for tactical advantages. Even their small talk was predatory. The day's most revealing moment came during the discussion of educational exchange programs. The humans proposed a comprehensive system for sharing knowledge across species, which sounded wonderful until everyone realized it would give them access to the complete learning history of every participating civilization. "Knowledge is power," said a human delegate with what they probably thought was a reassuring smile. "And we're very interested in empowerment." The Education Consortium spent the rest of the day trying to decide if they'd just been offered a partnership or threatened with intellectual consumption. As the session progressed, the humans' true nature became increasingly apparent. They weren't just participating in diplomatic relations, they were treating the entire process as an exercise in dominance through competence. Every proposal, every suggestion, every casual observation was part of a larger strategy that most species were only beginning to comprehend. The Technology Development Committee presented their latest innovations in AI research, only to have the humans respond with suggestions that made advanced artificial intelligence sound like a basic survival tool. Have you considered applying evolutionary algorithms to your development processes? They asked, as if suggesting that AI should literally evolve wasn't terrifying enough. A particularly tense moment arose when discussing defense technologies. The humans listened to presentations about advanced shield systems and energy weapons, with the polite interest of predators watching prey describe their defenses. "Interesting approach," said one human, making notes with their suspicious writing implement. "We found that the best defense is often a good offense." The fact that they delivered this ancient military axiom while adjusting their cufflinks somehow made it more menacing. The day's sessions concluded with a discussion about future cooperation initiatives. The humans proposed a series of joint projects that would have been completely reasonable if not for their subtle yet persistent focus on efficiency, advancement, and what they called competitive advantage. "We believe in win-win situations," said the human delegation leader, demonstrating an understanding of victory that somehow seemed to include everyone else's surrender. As the various species filed out of the chamber, many found themselves reviewing their own species' evolutionary history, wondering how they had missed the signs that somewhere in the galaxy, a species had evolved to turn diplomatic relations into a refined form of predation. The Galactic Council's psychological assessment team, watching from their observation room, added a new category to their species classification system: diplomatic apex predator. The humans were its only entry. The human delegation's evening routine added another layer of unease to the station's atmosphere. They were observed spending hours in the station's fitness facility, maintaining their physical capabilities even after a full day of mental hunting. The sight of humans doing something called burpees while discussing trade policies made several species question the nature of reality. "They're not just predators," observed the Xenobiological Studies Director, watching the humans through security feeds. "They're predators who've turned civilization itself into a hunting ground." The day ended with the human delegation requesting access to the station's historical archives, supposedly for background research. The fact that they specified interest in records of past diplomatic conflicts and resolution strategies made the archives director seriously consider erasing several centuries of documentation. As the station's night cycle began, various species retreated to their quarters, many of them updating their diplomatic protocols to include new categories of threat assessment. The humans, meanwhile, could be heard discussing the next day's agenda with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for planning military campaigns. The station's AI, analyzing the day's events, created a new behavioral pattern recognition protocol specifically for monitoring human diplomatic strategies. It classified their approach as aggressively cooperative, a paradox that somehow perfectly captured their nature. Tomorrow would bring the final day of initial negotiations, and with it the growing realization that humanity hadn't just joined the galactic community. They had turned it into their newest hunting ground, armed with nothing more than suits, smiles, and an evolutionary history that had prepared them to turn any situation into a successful hunt. The human delegation's final message for the day was delivered with their characteristic blend of professionalism and predatory intent. Tomorrow's sessions should be very enlightening. Several species decided to spend the night reviewing their insurance policies and emergency evacuation procedures. After all, when dealing with predators who had mastered the art of diplomatic hunting, it was better to be prepared for any outcome, especially when those predators seemed to treat galactic politics as just another form of natural selection. The final day of negotiations dawned with all the comfort of a supernova in a matchbox. The human delegation arrived precisely on time, their suits somehow looking even more predatory than before. A feat that several species had bet good credits wasn't possible. Today's agenda? Finalizing treaties, establishing permanent diplomatic channels, and trying not to think too hard about how humanity had managed to reshape galactic politics in just 3 days. The morning began with what would later be termed the incident. A minor trade dispute between two species erupted into heated debate. Before the council moderator could intervene, the humans stepped in with a solution so elegantly brutal that both parties agreed to it while simultaneously filing for protective custody. "We just thought it was a logical compromise," said a human delegate, straightening their tie in a way that somehow reminded everyone of a predator cleaning its claws. The real revelation came during the military cooperation summit. The humans presented their defense capabilities, not through boring statistics or dry reports, but with casual references to their basic training that made hardened warrior species question their career choices. "Oh, that's just standard Earth military preparation," explained a human delegate, describing what sounded like survival horror scenarios. "We find it builds character." The Military Coordination Committee spent the next hour trying to reconcile how a species could consider orbital drop training character building. Then came the economic final agreements. The humans unveiled their complete vision for galactic trade integration, a system so comprehensively efficient that it made previous economic models look like trading beads for shells. Several financial advisors had to be sedated when they realized the humans had essentially created an economic ecosystem where competition itself was the apex predator. "It's just market dynamics," said a human representative, their smile suggesting they knew exactly how terrifying that concept was to species that had spent millennia avoiding conflict. The afternoon brought the final shock. During a routine security drill, the station's systems detected a minor breach in the outer hull. Before anyone could react, the entire human delegation had not only identified the threat, but had also coordinated a response that involved 3 different containment protocols they had apparently designed just in case. "Always be prepared," they said, adjusting their suit jackets while maintenance crews stared in awe at the efficiency of their solution. The day's closing ceremony was a masterclass in predatory diplomacy. The humans presented their final proposals with such well-crafted precision that it took most species several hours to realize they had just agreed to what amounted to a complete restructuring of galactic power dynamics, all while thinking it was their idea. As the various delegations prepared to depart, the human representatives delivered their parting words. "We look forward to a long and mutually beneficial relationship with all species. After all, we're all in this together, evolving, adapting, surviving." The emphasis on surviving sent chills through various species' nervous systems. The Galactic Diplomatic Hub, once a symbol of civilized cooperation, had been forever changed. The humans departed as they had arrived, with predatory grace and perfect manners, leaving behind a galaxy that was simultaneously more efficient and more terrified than ever before. In the aftermath, the Galactic Council created a new diplomatic classification, terrestrial apex negotiators, though some suggested predators in informal wear might be more accurate. The final report filed by the Council's chief administrator contained just one line: Earth didn't send diplomats. They sent what they've always been, apex predators who learned to accessorize. May the galaxy survive their efficiency. And somewhere on their journey back to Earth, the human delegation was already planning their next diplomatic hunt. Their perfectly tailored suits hid the nature of what they truly were. Evolution's answer to the question, what if we made predators bureaucratic? The galaxy would never be the same. But then again, that had been the plan all along. As their ship disappeared into FTL, one final message was broadcast to the station. "Thank you for such a productive meeting. We'll be in touch." Never had such a polite statement sounded so much like a predator marking its territory. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Next time Earth called for diplomatic talks, they'd know to send their warriors, not their diplomats. Though against humans, the difference was purely academic. After all, they hadn't just changed the game. They'd turned the entire galaxy into their hunting ground. Armed with nothing but suits, smiles, and several million years of apex predator evolution, the human delegation was already preparing for their next meeting, proving that in the grand dance of galactic politics, Earth's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their strength. It was their ability to turn civilization itself into just another form of natural selection.